guys, here come the Dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Clubmobile. We have such a special guest sitting with us today, and we're so honored and thankful to welcome Harriet Leitch.
Hello, everyone. Hi to all the listeners. Winnie and Gabby, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, we're so happy you could join us.
This is the one we've been hinting at for the past 4 months. I think 3 or 4 months. We're like, hey,
we've been keeping this
coming
up our sleeve for a while. Yes.
And now the day is here. Finally, yes. we meet face to face via Zoom, which is such a pleasure for me.
And now we're going to force Harriet into talking about things she's done for the past 3 or 4 years.
A trip down memory lane, as I said to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Which is wonderful.
The one thing I've been most curious about, I'm just diving right in because this has been bugging me for a year. I know that when the boys auditioned for Masters of the Air, it was an open call for Gail Clevin. Was it the same for you? Like, sort of, were you asked to do Marge, or?
I had a very unique experience of being cast in that production because I was sent a picture of somebody, a woman that had been part of the American Red Cross. And it was a kind of a reference photo for the kinds of women they might have been looking to cast and match for the production. And I had done a few things that were wartime and 50s set. That seems to be where my default casting lies. And so the casting director of that production knew me prior and said, look, I'm looking for women that kind of match this kind of photo reference that we have of the American Red Cross girls from World War II. I think you could be a great match, and I think you'd be really right for the role. Can you send in any evidence you have from previous productions, in this style? The hair, I have really long hair naturally, but it's cut short, it's curled, it's maybe in a hat. And so I did that, and then there I was winding up as Tatty Spaatz. So for me, it was a really easy way into working on a production, but it was really the work that I had done prior and having met the casting director before that kind of was my audition into it, I suppose. So it was a really easy ride for me. But there is one thing that I speculate about the production is obviously it's really an adaptation of one man's experience and all the people that he met along the way and his experiences. And I don't know whether someone in the research team, maybe, I'd love to know if anyone's out there listening, how late the addition was of incorporating women into the storyline, specifically the American Red Cross women, because obviously there's Tatty and there's the character of Helen. So I would be fascinated to know at which point they became part of the story, because they came and went in the first 4 episodes, really. And I just think everyone was keen to know more, like what happened to them, where did they go? Obviously, Masters of the Air isn't about them, but because they featured, it definitely sparked an interest, I thought.
Oh, for sure. Hence why we're here.
That's what sparked that.
Exactly.
Genuinely, that's what kicked all this off for us, is that I said, wow, there were a lot of women on base at Thorpe Abbott's. And funny enough, when I was out there a couple of weeks ago, I had asked one of the volunteers at the museum. I said, we did all this research for the first episode, which was on the Red Cross, and it was kind of determined that they traveled wherever they were needed. They lived off-site in these estates and would take the bus out and travel wherever they were needed. And then after the invasion, they were dispersed throughout Western Europe. But Thorpe Abbott's, I found out, was the only airfield that had 3 permanent Red Cross girls living on base throughout the course of the war.
So fascinating.
So the girls that lived in the estates would, come in and sub in for the girls that lived on base, and they would get a break. But Thorpe Abbott's was the only base that had 3 Red Cross girls that lived permanently with the men, and it was only the three girls. There were only three women on base. So I guess what you see in the show is that there's secretaries and assistants, none of that, nurses, none of that existed in real life, which was so fascinating to me to find out.
I mean, that's amazing. I'm and it must have been such an intense feeling coming in to do that role, and you are so surrounded by all of these men, which us as actors also felt it was so male dominated. Not that I can even begin to imagine how they were feeling and what they went through, but there was definitely, you got a hint of how that must have felt, these couple of women in amongst this sea of testosterone. That's quite intense, and for them to have to handle all of these men that they were seeing every day or every other day, or however often they were seeing the same people, must have been a really intense experience, I think.
Were you around a lot of the male actors during the time that you were shooting? Because I know obviously it was still COVID. Were you separated a whole lot, or was there time to kind of interact and talk and get to know one another?
It's kind of amazing that they managed to still continue filming in and amongst, the back end of COVID. I know that all of the guys that had very substantial roles, they had already had a boot camp. So they had such a really brilliant understanding of the training that all of those men went through. So they were quite tightly bonded. And then we did come in later, and it was nice. We got to chat to them. Obviously, there were scenes in the officers' mess. So there were lots of people around. And, on a film set, there's always time for some chat. There's a lot of waiting around when setup is going on, which was great for us. But in a way, I guess it was kind of helpful that we didn't know them too well, because that was definitely akin to when those girls arrived. They'd just come from the States, they knew nobody, and it must have been really intimidating at first, for sure, before they really got to know everyone.
Did you get any extra information about Tatty before you began the role? Was it a case of, I know in Band of Brothers, Gabby, we've spoken about this before, they got given a folder or an envelope full of information about who they were going to portray? Did you get something similar?
Just the timing of Band of Brothers too. There was
they were still alive.
You could still call, and there was a lot of them still alive at the time, but there is minimal information on Tatty out there that we can find, at least.
I know. I mean, well, first of all, I'll admit I had never heard of the American Red Cross. So immediately I was like, well, what is this? Who is this woman? And then to learn that I was going to portray somebody that had lived, what an amazing responsibility and a real privilege, as all of those guys in Master of the Air did also. But you're right, there's not much about her. And considering that she was the daughter of, basically the top of the RAF, it's kind of amazing. Apart from those pictures in Life magazine, which are like the sort of the touchstone if you are Googling Tatty, there's not much out there. And I wish there had been more. But I would love to shout out this. I mean, maybe we can put it in the show notes or something. But I found a fantastic dissertation that somebody had written about the American Red Cross, and I feel like that was really my way into understanding her experience and the experience of her colleagues. But it would have been, wonderful to know more about her specifically. But I felt like once I had done lots of research about these women, and I also read a great book called Spitfire Women, which maybe you guys have seen, I kind of felt like, even though I was portraying Tatty, and Emma was portraying Helen as well, we were kind of flying the flag for women of the RAC in general, just because they haven't really had their day on stage and screen. So although I kind of got the feeling of Tatty through these photos and the very minimal amount which I'd read about, it was kind of like, how could we get the sensibility of these women in general into these characters, because so many people don't know about them and the jobs that they did.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very jealous to hear that these guys had a whole pack given to them about their character.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting actually, because there was a couple of wonderful dialect coaches on that production, and the research was phenomenal. They had tried to find out where all of these people had been born or where they were brought up, and they did say, like, we couldn't really find much about Tatty, but because she was in a military family, we've kind of taken that to mean she will have moved around a lot, so her accent specifically was quite general.
Yeah.
Whereas some people on that production were way more specific, in terms of like which state they were from or which city or which town. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway, that she will have traveled around a lot, because of her father's job.
Yeah.
I have to say, you resemble Tatty. Just you
Oh,
really
yeah.
you do. You
You do look like her.
You do. You look very much like her, and I think that they were spot on with the casting. They really were.
I think the team must have seen that photo and thought, we know,
I know who to pick.
That has a resemblance, which is maybe why the casting process went the way they did. They were like, we know somebody that we've cast in the past that does resemble this person, so maybe that's why it was a good fit. But yeah, it's quite weird when you see people from the past, like, that you kind of
That
look like
you.
Yeah.
There's kind of you weirdly sort of feel a bit of a connection to them, even though you don't know them and you're not related. But yeah, that's why it was so special to portray Tatty, I suppose. Yeah.
Did they give you any kind of like, was there any kind of like training or like dance training? Because I know there's quite a bit of like scenes in the officers club. Was there any kind of like, hey, we're gonna throw you into like a dance class and teach you how to dance like the 40s, or
There was one day where there was this brilliant choreographer. I believe her name was Coral, but I don't want to misremember. But anyway, she was absolutely fantastic, and she took everybody through that style of dancing. But you may notice that in the production, everyone is extremely good at the dance, at the dances, and most of the girls that are dancing with the guys, have, like, they're professional, and they are dancers. But everybody did have an understanding, which was great, because then at least when that music was playing, you had a feel for the era and the period, and actually you've been able to watch these brilliant dancers and see, how people would have been dancing then. It was amazing. But something that's really struck me when we were filming, and also when I have been reading about the ACR girls, is, the shifts that they had done, as you both had discussed in an earlier episode. The hours were crazy. Not to say that the hours that the men were doing were completely unbelievable as well. But it was the fact that they were then expected to go to these dances and dress in a certain way and be sort of available to dance with the men, and then be up at 4 to make the donuts. They just had like these two really opposing parts of the job requirements, I suppose, which I kind of felt fascinating. Was fascinating rather. And every time we had to change from the gear that we would wear in the Clubmobiles versus the outfits that we would wear in the officers' mess, we kind of did say, oh, I wonder if like the girls also felt a bit of a resentment for getting out of these clothes, trousers, that was really liberating. They looked like one of the guys, and had these amazing jobs to do, and then having to revert back to actually more of a feminine role. That I find a really interesting, part of their job. And I wonder, did they really like this part of it? Did they resent it? It would be fascinating to understand more about that, I think.
I think that's something that Gabby and I have discussed in the very first episode, and among other ones that we've done, is that every woman was expected just to paint on a smile no matter what was happening. So I think, to go from being liberated through the day, you're wearing pants the same as men, to then have to revert back to the core femininity and what you're there for. essentially looking after men. Even they've been up since 4 a.m. and they still have to be available for men that they've never met before because that's just their job.
I forgot where I
Yeah,
read
you're
it.
so right.
Yeah,
Mm.
I forgot where I read this. Winnie, maybe you remember, because I think I might have sent it to you or you might have sent it to me. There was
One way.
after, was it after the Bremen mission or after the Munster mission, one of the Red Cross girls, one of the men who had come back, I think it might have been after Munster, one
Yeah.
of the men that had come back on Rosie Rosenthal's fort just couldn't wrap his head around it. And one of the Red Cross girls stayed up with him and walked the path from his hut to the officers club back and forth till
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning. And then she got up
She
to do
had
her
to go
shift
to
in the
work.
morning. And I
I
That's so
mean, I just
available
can't
love that
remember
they
where
got on
I
there.
can't remember where we read that. Maybe on the 100th Bomb Group or
I
maybe
think it was.
maybe on the 100th Bomb Group's website.
Yeah.
But I just read that and I went, oh my God.
Mm.
Me, if I stay up past my bedtime, I'm like, I can't get myself out of bed in the morning.
Zombified.
And I'm a zombie through the day. It's true. But like it never crossed their mind like, oh, I have a job to do. Also, I have to go to bed. It was my job is to take care of him. And I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
think
really
it's
admirable.
the emotional labor, which is often, even now, so associated with women, was something that they were still expected to do in those roles. I mean, it must have been such a lot. And they weren't far behind the men in terms of, if in combat, they were kind of like trailing where they were going, especially when, they arrived in France and onwards. And, they were, even though they were not on the front line, they were definitely seeing the aftermath of the devastation and, the desolate conditions that the bombing had left towns, people in. And they definitely saw their fair share of horror.
Yeah.
Some women, in the ACR made it as far as Germany. And then, feeling very conflicted about seeing, German civilians that are like destitute and starving. And obviously their role has been to serve and to feed and to welcome and to comfort, men coming up to the Clubmobiles, but also visiting, medical facilities. And, their job was so expansive, I suppose. And yeah, I just think the emotional toll they must have felt through the secondhand information that they received from all of the guys, and as well as what they saw themselves. Yeah, it must have been a lot to carry, but
Oh,
I
for
suppose at
sure.
least they then had each other, even if it was just a crew of three of them and the driver. I mean, the bonds that they must have formed, yeah, like
Oh, for
the guys in
sure.
the cockpit must have been,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
amazing.
Mm. Did you have a similar audition process for Lee, or did Kate Winslet just kind of come along and pick you up and put her in her pocket and said, "Hey,
Come along for the ride.
yes."
No, I did take, but so curious to end up auditioning for another real person that lived.
Mm.
I kind of couldn't believe it. I was like, and again, World War II.
Typecast.
What's
No,
going
I'm
on
kidding.
here? Yeah, I've got an era, definitely got an era. Um, but then this was kind of what I felt incredible, and why I just, why these kind of productions are amazing for both the actor and the viewers is, wow, we get this opportunity to really deep dive into maybe roles that have not been portrayed before, particularly with
Yeah.
women. I'd never heard of the air transport auxiliary. So when I saw the scene, I was kind of like, wow, I'm fascinated. What? So the women were flying? Okay,
Mm.
like who are these? Who are these people? Um, so yeah, it was a tape, as most actors are doing now post COVID. And then off I went as soon as I got the part with lots of research, and again tried to find as much as I could out about Anne Douglas. Again, really scant information
Mm.
of her, but brilliantly there is loads of information about the air transport auxiliary. So similar in the way that Tatty Spaatz, I kind of try to, get the sort of flavour of those girls into her.
Mm.
Same with Anne Douglas, the things that I had read about the air transport auxiliary. And when we did the scene, I mean, Kate was fantastic to work with, and she was really keen that we improvised quite a lot of it, because she said, you know, actually, as soon as Lee Miller starts taking photos, the script that has been written, it kind of seems to dry slightly, because we're
Yeah.
sort of focused on maybe cinematically what we're going to see when she takes the picture. So she said, you know, be really keen to just improvise it through, which was a gift. I just thought, well, if I can get more airtime for this character
Mhm.
and flying the flag for these women, that would be absolutely brilliant, because I was sure that there were other people that didn't know about the women in the air transport auxiliary, like I hadn't. So that was, again, a brilliant opportunity to get really nerdy, and sort of, yeah, figure out what these women had done, basically.
We loved it. We sat and watched it together, and we kept
Mhm.
doing the Leonardo
Did
DiCaprio point
you?
every
As,
single time
as
we saw
together as
someone
we
we knew.
could, right?
As
Being
together
so
as we
far
could.
apart.
On the phone.
But
Every single time we saw someone we knew, we're like, hey!
oh yeah.
Hey!
Oh, and isn't that funny that, you know, yeah, there are
I think I
obviously are actors
remember.
out there that are just so suited for World War II. They pop
Oh
up
yeah.
again and again.
I think I remember at one point we were watching it, and I think I heard Jim Murray before I saw him,
We
and I
heard
said,
him before.
"Oh,
There he is. It's this Jim.
I
It's
said,
the
oh,
same
I know
accent
that
as
voice."
Had you, I assume that you had all met during Masters, so was it nice to work with James Murray again, or was your scene probably wasn't together? I don't think you interact.
I actually didn't see anyone while I did Lee.
Wow.
The Waltham base was, I mean, so brilliantly and beautifully built, and set decorated. Um, uh, the women's quarters in which we filmed the scene with Anne Douglas, I mean, the attention to detail was just unbelievable. You know, I barely felt I even needed to act. I was so immersed in their world and their surroundings as they would have been, which was just amazing. Such a gift, such a brilliant production design on that film. But that was like a random day in the middle of the week in Budapest, which is where the majority of
Wow.
the filming was.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had built the whole thing there. So I didn't cross over with any of them, but I had met some at a screening for Masters of the Air. There was a screening where first two episodes were shown. So like vaguely, but even me, I was doing exactly what you were both doing. Say, oh, I've definitely seen them
Like,
before.
when did
They were in Masters, or yeah, yeah. So no, I had exactly the same experience with you, as you guys, because I
That's
hadn't
so
met.
funny.
Yeah,
Did you
but you know,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, not at all.
Now, did you know anybody prior to Masters that was cast? Like, did you have any connections with anybody going in to?
None at all, apart from when I arrived. That's when I was like, oh, I know this person. I had worked with a lovely actor called Matt Gavin before, and I'm sure
Oh,
I'm sure, yeah, he played, was it Crookshank?
Yes.
yes.
I think that was his character. Yeah, so I had worked with him, and you know, as I said before, there were so many men and not many
So
women. It
many.
was quite intimidating, especially
Yeah.
because they all knew each other. So to see, you know, a friend like that was really comforting.
Oh, that's so
So that was
sweet.
wonderful. Yeah, or you know, you see people that you recognise from other productions. You know, there were so many talented people in that production. But yeah, with Lee, it really was just, I didn't see anyone else,
Just you and
just
Kate.
Kate, and yeah, and then when we did the scene. But what was amazing was, when I was at drama school, I had been part of like a small female collective, and we had written a play. One of the characters was Lee Miller, so I had known about her, and so as soon as the audition came through, that's when I was like, I know that Lee Miller is just absolutely amazing, and that so little people have an understanding of her time as a war correspondent. So it was really, you know, special to be a part of this particular story where that was going to be highlighted. You know, and there were so many other female war correspondents, well, there have been. So they definitely deserve their time in the spotlight. It was, yeah, such a
For
pleasure to be a
sure.
part of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's such a
yeah,
full circle moment,
Yeah.
especially for an actor to do it in drama school and then come back around and do it professionally. That must have felt really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. But then I suppose, yeah, once you do something like that, you kind of, I mean, I suppose like you both now do, it's like you've got your interest is piqued anytime you like see something about, I don't know, donut dollies or
Yeah.
whoever it might be. This has happened to me recently because there is a theatre company called Tilted Wig, and I've seen that they have a touring production around the UK called, I think it's called Spitfire Girls, which is, you know, about women that were flying in World War II. So I'm desperate to go and see that, having, you know, learnt about Anne Douglas, and there's so many more women to know about that flew planes. So yeah, I suppose once you've done a very specific project, it's always there in the back of your mind. You're hoping that you're going to find other things that are related. But yeah, full circle moment, as you say, definitely.
That's so
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah,
I think it would be kind of amiss if we didn't mention what your kind of side stuff is. Can we talk about the drawing room? Is that something you're comfortable talking about?
Of course, yeah. I mean, well, I'm sure most actors will resonate with the fact that, you know, you're not always acting. You've got to do some
doing
other
everything
things.
else. Was that something you started independently, or was it you and a bunch of friends, or how did that idea come up?
You know what? This was actually something that I came to during COVID. I wasn't working, as most of us weren't, and there were two brilliant women who are both food stylists, and one's an artist and one's a food writer, and they had formed this life drawing supper club night, and then they were looking for an assistant, and then because they couldn't do their in real life night during COVID, they were like, we need an assistant because we're going to send, you know, materials to draw with, you know, to anybody that wants to participate on Zoom. And so we were sending things out, you know, to people all over the country or all over Europe that wanted to come and join for the evening to draw online. And then COVID ended. We went back to doing things in real life, but then they both got busy with their own projects. And so with their blessing, they let me carry on under my own name, The Drawing Room. And so I've just carried on with that ever since. So yeah, it's a nice creative side thing that I do apart from acting.
Seeing everything that you and your you know, the groups that gather with you put together. I mean, I had said to Winnie, I was a little upset. I was kind of hoping my trip would have coincided with one of your events, because I was even though I can't do more than a stick figure.
It's so nice to see that.
That would
have
fun,
just
even
been
though
fantastic.
I can't draw anything at all. But
it's so for anyone. No, drawing is not a requirement.
It seems very
Previous
therapeutic.
Experience isn't a requirement.
Yeah.
But that's it. And, you know, it's a random group of people come. Some people come on their own. People, you know, will start talking to the person next to them that they've never met. It's a time without screens. So yeah, it's really special. It's lovely. The people that come are just always really, really nice. And just up for giving things a go, which I just think is, yeah, lovely. But yeah, I mean, that would have just been fantastic to meet in person.
We've promised each other next year that we do it.
Yeah,
we're gonna
plan to try back next year.
Yeah, we're gonna try and graduate from drawing the sun in the corner of the paper before we come over. We're gonna
just don't worry about any of that. Just come. We'll draw together.
Then it's gonna be stick figures and the sun in the corner.
How many times have you both met in person?
Never.
Have you ever?
Never.
No.
Seriously.
You know what, the you know, the podcast is so brilliant, and you have you know, covered so many things. But the story of you both coming together to form this podcast, it's like a podcast in itself. You know what I mean?
It could be its own episode.
Could be. We could probably do an episode on that, but
we probably should.
Like, it is wild. It is I will say the internet is a crazy place. It's a great place for a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But it was just one of those like moments where it was a big group of people that had come like into like this chat for Masters of the Air, and then a handful of us just kind of broke off and were like, let's just go this way. And Winnie and I just kind of clicked, I think, from the jump.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
This is fascinating. I don't know whether along with other listeners, this is what I've been dying to know. So it's so pleased that I'm getting to talk to you directly about this, because I just think, like, isn't that amazing that, a show can unite people in that way with
Yeah.
such a specific interest? That's just incredible.
I
Yeah,
will
we need
say
a whole
the
podcast
World War
episode about
II
you guys.
community, the World War II community is large. There are a lot of
Mm,
people involved, and surpasses what even I thought. And it was very, very interesting to put faces to names when I was over there a couple weeks ago,
Mm.
to just be like, oh
yeah.
yeah, oh I follow you on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, okay, I know you. Okay, now I could put your username right to your face, and it's like, okay, I do
Sure.
know you, or I've been following you for what, upwards of 5, 6 years now. It's
Mm.
nice to meet you type of thing. But it is a large community, and everybody, I have to say, everybody's very involved and
Mm.
very passionate about it, which
I
is really
mean,
Yeah.
that is just amazing, truly amazing. And when things on the news about the internet can be so negative, the things
yeah.
so positive to come out of communities on the internet is just
Yeah.
amazing. And I'm so curious to know, has World War II history always been a part of your lives, or is this a certain interest that has come much later? I'm fascinated to know.
For
Winnie?
me, when I was in school, I was very into it, and then I kind of drifted off because I didn't have a community to share it with. It was kind of one of those things where if you like history, you were kind of picked on at school for some peculiar reason. I feel like you and I were kind of in the same sort of year group at school, probably, Harriet. So I
Yeah.
left it for a long time, and then I watched Band of Brothers in 20. I was very late, 2019. I watched it, and I said, "Oh, something's kind of stirring." And then I watched The Pacific. I didn't like it. I'm sorry. And then I watched Masters of the Air, and I'm like, "This is it." This is exactly what I
Yeah.
wanted to dive into. And then, meeting the little group that we were in, and then me and Gabby talking about it for months until this idea came up. I had never uh, dove into anything research wise. I don't want to bring the mood down. I kind of neglected myself for a good few years. So doing this has definitely brought me back to myself. Um, it's
Mm.
great. I love it. It keeps my brain ticking. I love it so much. But
You
yeah,
grew up right
Absolutely.
in the
I
heart of
left it.
you grew up in the heart of the history of
That's
it
the
though
thing. Yeah,
too.
I grew up in East Anglia, so I grew up right in the middle of everything. And I didn't
Wow.
care.
Okay.
I didn't care until now. And now I can go home
Mm.
again and be like, oh, this is now my job. Is a really nice
Isn't that
feeling.
brilliant?
That
It's
was the
I
really
fun
definitely
part
nice.
feel like
about being
the
over there, is that I was like, my friend was here, and this is where she grew up, and I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
wow, that's really special.
We don't
And I
have
think
much
to
of that here
come
in Brooklyn.
to no,
Not so much.
um,
I live near an active base, but it's not like
okay,
it's not an active base like you would find, like it's not a really, really big one. It's the old fort. It's the Fort Hamilton Army base. So it's literally, I could probably throw a rock to it from my living room window,
okay,
but um, it's still active. I don't know how active it is. It also functions as like an event space. I remember I had a relative who got
okay.
married there in the 90s. So, it's one of those type of places, but my dad
But
was
what
always
about for you,
very into
Gabby,
it.
and your interest in
My
like
dad has
World War
always
Two
been interested in it. His dad served in the war, his uncles, and they
okay.
all, I think I've said it before, they all served and came home by the grace of God. Um, but he would always have something on in the house. And I remember my mom would always be like, "Are you watching Patton again?" He'd be like, "Patton's a great movie." Um, and I always kind of would like hover and watch a little bit. And I regret not studying it in school. Like, not that I regret studying what I studied. I have a degree in English and writing. But I think I regret not giving myself the opportunity to really get into it more. But then again, would I have appreciated it if it was like kind of forced down my throat in an educational way like that? I don't know. But as I got older, I think I grew to appreciate it more. And then I watched Band of Brothers. not long after it came out, because I remember my dad being like, "You're too young to watch this," in 2001. But I don't think I was too young to watch it. But oh, you're too young to watch this. And I watched Band of Brothers and I loved it. I felt like I just like the Easy Company guys had this bond, and I was like, oh my God, they're so close. And then to see how they were friends after, I was like, that's amazing. How they stayed a unit until they all eventually passed away. Then I watched The Pacific. I think I watched The Pacific during COVID. And not that I didn't like it, but I feel like The Pacific is a very specific type of war media. And it's a little bit more gritty,
Yeah.
which I think the Pacific Theater was just darker. But there was something about Masters that really just clicked for me. That really just made me feel like, that's the one.
Yeah, it kind of struck us both, especially because, you know, we're now aware of this group of women that we both did not know about. I mean, for me, not knowing about it, it makes sense. It's the American Red Cross. Me and you, Harriet, have, I guess, a similar education in the British school system. You don't really get much out of history. But then obviously for Gabby not to know about it, and then for us to be able to come together and really dig into it the way that we have.
The most we get on the Red Cross in school is that there was nurses during the war.
Yeah, and that was that.
And then, you know, in the, you know, if there's like, you know, Hurricane Sandy or anything like that, then it's, oh, donate to the Red Cross. And that's all you think that the Red Cross is now, is that they just accept donations and they accept, like, you know, clothes and things for those in need. You don't actually think there were women who made coffee and donuts during the war, who did more than make coffee and donuts, if you really put it into perspective.
Yeah.
So much more. And I likewise, you know, I didn't go on to study history further, so there's so many things that I feel very naive about. But then it's why productions like Masters and Lee are so great for you know, being able to really do a very specific deep dive. And you know, for the characters that I played, have knowing nothing about either of those two institutions, you know, I was kind of shocked and a bit saddened that I hadn't come across them before. And that the female role in the war effort is so missed, be it both in education or, you know, in its depiction on stage and screen. You know, I don't know, let's have you know, the American Red Cross have their own series, or you know, the ATA as well. It would be fascinating if, you know, a big production company or streamer picked up on something like that, because we know that there, you know, all over the world, people are fascinated by World War II and are really keen to like keep the history alive. So anybody out there that wants to write female
can we do that? And then can we
it.
bring you and Emma back to play your characters
We'll
again?
come back.
And we'll sit and we will watch over and over again.
Oh yes.
Do you have a favorite memory from either production or both productions?
Do you know what? Both of them had the most amazing costume designers, and they had both been exceptionally true to the uniforms. So they were complete replicas of what those women would have worn. You know, even down to the casting of the buttons that had, you know, ACR on, or the badges, or, you know, whatever it was. So to, you know, be in something that really felt like that's what those women would have worn was, you know, so great and so valuable for getting into the role as well. You know, the look and the feel of them, the feel of the fabric, and how restricted or I don't know which pockets they had, really was so helpful, I would say. But I think, yeah, they were both very special in their own ways. And really, for me, the biggest gifts were, you know, having the opportunity to play them for the research. You know, I think one of the biggest things that shocked me so much about the research in Anne Douglas's case was, you know, these women for the ATA, they were pilots, and they had their licenses, and they were all from pretty well-off families and they've been able to do that in, you know, growing up. But it was the fact that each plane that they flew had, you know, a little card in the glove compartment which had the instructions for that specific plane, which they may never ever have driven at all, or piloted. You know, so thinking about what that must have been like for these women to get into these planes, take that out of the glove compartment, have a look at these really scant instructions, and then, you know, go and fly it solo with only, you know, a compass, no radio, no nothing, just incredibly exposing and dangerous. And yeah, I just think learning about that was just incredible. Yeah, will continue my research and my interest in it for sure. I just thought it was amazing, really amazing.
It was the same for the WASP, as we've mentioned in our previous episodes, where they were just given a handbook as they got into a plane. And a lot of the times these women were not told of any discrepancies on the aircraft. They were just told, fresh off the line, take it and fly it to this base and then come back for the next one. So yeah, it's pretty similar. They got a little card, and then the WASP got a handbook and was sent on their merry way. So
I think it was,
I
said,
mean,
oh,
it's just
do a
so
lap.
dangerous.
Yeah, do a lap and come down.
Yeah.
If you could do a lap and come down 3 times, then okay, you're good to take it off and ferry it where it needs to go.
But I think that so speaks to the types of women that these, you know, people serving in all of these organizations were. You know, they're just so brave, but also outgoing and adventurous, and you know, stoic, and all of these attributes that, you know, probably previously had either, you know, not been on the surface or not been, you know, they're very counter to how men wanted to perceive them in society. So to have these experiences, I can so see why so many women were at a loss after the war in terms of the liberation that they felt and experienced, because, you know, you just spent all of these years flying all of these amazing planes all over the UK, solo, doing all of these things that a man would have ordinarily done, and then feeling like you need to go 10 steps backward afterwards. Must have been a huge shock.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I think Gabby and I have spoken about this and thought this, that we're researching all of these women and we're beginning to see bits of ourselves in them. And I feel like it's making us more outgoing and a little braver to grab what we want to get. Do you feel a similar way after playing 2 very strong, mostly well-known now women? Do you ever see yourself in people you're portraying, or is it sort of you sort of find that afterwards?
Well, firstly, I think that is absolutely phenomenal that you both feel that way after, you know, researching all of these women. They are amazing. And yeah, likewise, you know, you always try and see what your similarities and differences might be with the characters that you play. But definitely reading and researching about them and their courage, really does make you reflect on, you know, how courageous you are yourself. And maybe there can be things that are taken from their lives, definitely. And what I was so struck with, particularly because both Tatty and Anne were photographed by people, you know, for Life magazine and by Lee Miller. And I just was so struck by the smiles in lots of those photos. And, you know, they obviously, there were horrors from what they heard and witnessed, and, you know, by the men that they were very close to, but also just the relish in these roles and this liberation, I find like really touching. And that is something as a woman now that I, you know, really want to keep hold of. You know, we've come such a long way and we've still got a way to go. But they were all part of that. So that I feel very strongly about, and is really inspiring.
Do you have anything
Love
else you
them.
want to
They're so
ask?
badass. They're just brilliant. Just love them all.
Gabby, was there anything else you wanted to ask? Because I don't know if we've missed anything.
I don't. Okay, no. Did you take anything from the set? Did you get to keep anything from the master set, like the pins or anything that was on your costume? Did you get to keep anything?
Do you know
Because we
what?
have a habit of collecting things, Winnie and
Do
I.
you?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Patches,
I mean, you
pins.
Hoarders.
must have got stuff when you came to the UK, did you, from the
I did a
base,
number
from
on
the
the
museum?
PX. I did a number on the PX store at Thor Babbitt's. I did.
Yeah, good,
And
good.
it was 2 of everything because I sent 1 of everything that I bought back to Winnie.
That's gorgeous.
But we also have, each of us have it, a copy of That Life magazine with Tatty and the Red Cross girls. I found it on
No
eBay.
way.
Yeah, I found it on eBay.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Well,
And it's
I
really,
unfortunately, oh no, go on.
no, I was gonna say it's really well preserved. Like the person that had
Oh
it
yeah,
before
it was in
me.
cardboard.
Oh, great condition.
Isn't
But
that
it's
amazing?
almost like you open it and you see these pictures and you're like, am I meant to be touching this? Am I meant to?
Yeah, I'm meant to be
It's a
doing
very
this.
strange feeling, but
Yeah, real artifact.
I was,
Yeah.
very curious because I've been on the hunt for the cross, the pin that goes up at the top of their collars, and I can't find them
Yeah.
anywhere. I can't find them anywhere for like a decent price. But
Yeah,
I
not
had
one that
one.
without
requires a lot of
selling
money.
like, selling a kidney or something.
If I had got one from the set, it would be on its way to you in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, they didn't. But what I would have been so keen to take home was they gave Tatty this additional jacket, which was kind of like one of the guys' jackets, and that had kind of been a choice because of the role of her father. An assumption was made that maybe that meant that she was either closer to them or one of them, or like a sister to them because of this connection. I'm sure, generally speaking, from what I've read, it was like very de rigueur for any American Red Cross girls to be romantically involved with the guys. So I mean, especially the general's daughter, I can imagine that was a real no-no.
Absolute no.
Yeah, so I think that jacket really was kind of a nod to like her being one of them, or like they were her brothers as well. Like a guy might have, one of her closest mates might have given that to her. So I would have loved to have kept that. Don't know where that is now, probably in some costume store, but
we only
go to
asked
the story
because
around that.
in interviews that we've watched of the boys during the press tour is that a lot of them were very light-fingered. So we assumed that everyone else was light-fingered. There's so many interviews where Anthony Boyle is, I took this and I took this and I also took this.
Well, when you're Anthony Boyle, you can get away with these things,
Correct. Very correct, yeah.
And they were on it for it was over a year. It was so monumental and huge for those guys. So I think they deserved it. I think they deserved it.
How long were you on set? Because if they were on set for a year, were you there for like a month, maybe?
Oh, we honestly popped in for like just a couple of days here, a couple of days there. It was super sporadic. And then months and months went by. And then we wound up doing, that episode that's right at the end. So there was like a sort of a bit of a reunion to see everyone again. And obviously those guys had done so much filming, really, really intense scenes and all of the stuff in the cockpit. And then, we saw them at the end. So it was, only a few days really when you add it all up. But unfortunately, there was a beautiful scene that was cut, which was myself and Emma that was playing Helen, plus the land girls that were kind of in and around the base. And that was it was a great scene because we were all like round the table in the officers' mess, drinking, rebuffing the guys, saying, slinging her. We actually kind of want to just chat with the gals. We don't really want to do any dancing tonight. And it was a really, really fun scene. And it was such a shame that it didn't make it because, it was kind of like 5 or 6 women on screen together, which obviously for that show, it didn't happen at all. But maybe they'll release it one day. Who knows?
Gabby, we were robbed.
Apple TV, if you're listening.
Apple TV is on site.
If you're listening.
Yes,
it is
we needed it.
site.
With the death of DVDs, like where are all the deleted scenes at?
Right.
We're still waiting for Band of Brothers.
We're still waiting for
it's been 25 years.
Band of Brothers 25 years later.
Still waiting.
We're
Surely
gonna
they'll
wait
do some
50 for
anniversary
this,
thing. Yeah.
please.
uh,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
wild. Oh,
Robbed.
I would have loved to have seen that because that's kind of how you imagine it, right? In your head.
Mm,
That's kind of how you would picture it, that the girls would stick together.
yeah.
Totally.
I
Yeah.
also really
Yeah.
love that scene at the end where it's the playing of Winston Churchill announcing that the war's over, and you get a glimpse into where the girls had lived together.
Yes.
So they built that set for a 3-second clip of you guys hearing Winston Churchill. I would have loved a whole thing of, seeing the whole set that essentially belonged to you guys, to the Red
Yeah.
Cross.
Yes.
Because it looked
Yes.
great. It
And
looked like you were all stuffed in like sardines, truly.
yeah, yeah. And that is, the real gift of being part of a production on that level, because, everybody that works on something like that is so talented. And as I said with the set that I was on for Lee, it means that, you're so immersed in the world, every
Yeah.
single detail. They've got letters that the girls might be in the middle of writing. They've got maybe a guitar under their bed. They've got trinkets from home. They've got a picture of a loved one. I mean, the detail is just honestly phenomenal, which is such a gift for an actor, because you really feel like you're there. So yeah, they could really do with some like behind the scenes like tours or something. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
the
I
detail
they
is
think that
really
would
could
have been
amazing.
have.
really cool. Yeah.
They could have given us
Yeah,
more, and that's the thing. We always want more,
we
and
just want more. We just
we're
want more, don't we?
probably kind of greedy
This
sometimes.
goes back to let's make a show about the girls.
I
Exactly.
think so.
I
I'm
think we
here. We've
should.
got 3 signatures on the petition so far.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's three.
Give
Absolutely.
give Emma a call. Emma, come
We'll
back.
call Emma. Yes,
Come
we'll
on,
get the other
girly.
girls involved as well. Yeah, we're all
Please.
here. We're all here for it. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Bit of
what are
stuff
you
to
up
do.
to, and where can we find you next?
What am I up to next? Well, you won't believe this, but I'm going to be playing another real woman.
Yes,
I've obviously got this every woman face from the past. Who knows?
you do. You've got like
But
lack of
I'm
iPhone face, is what we call it. You haven't
Yes.
seen
definitely
an
Lack.
iPhone. You've
Yeah.
never played
none of
Snake on a
that.
Nokia. You don't
No,
know what
no,
DoorDash
God, no,
is. Like,
no idea. But I'm going to be part of the company of a new play, which is by an amazing British playwright called David Hare. And the play is going to be in Bath, in beautiful Bath.
that's where I was
Um,
born.
you're kidding me, Winnie?
I was
No,
born in Bath.
really?
Yeah,
Well, stunning Bath. It's going to be in
it's
Bath, and
beautiful.
Ray Fiennes is one of the leads in the show. But the character that I'm going to be covering, um, principally, is somebody called Edith Craig, who is this amazing, trailblazing female director, suffragette. She lived in a menage a trois her whole life with 2 other women.
Wow.
Just, I mean, again, somebody from history, a woman forgotten in history
Mm,
that, now I have the real pleasure of researching. So, yeah, on to that next, which is
that's
really
That's
exciting.
beautiful.
great.
So I've slightly got myself out of a World War II hole, but still in the
But
past.
we're still,
So.
yes. It's still Harriet has never looked at an iPhone a single day in her life.
No, never. No. And my friends will really laugh at you saying that, because I'm probably the least tech savvy out of my friends,
Yeah,
write in a paper diary. The make do and mend sort of mantra of the war couldn't suit me better. I'm all
that's
about it.
perfect.
So
I love
really
that.
it is typecasting, if I'm honest.
Let's not put ourselves in a hole here, Harriet. We can do
Yeah,
this.
sorry.
We
Yeah.
can get
Yeah.
out. Thank
Well, thank
you.
you so much for
Thank
having me,
you.
Winnie and Gabby. Honestly, it's just been such a pleasure to chat to you both. And
Oh,
wish I had had you there when I was doing my research. It would have been so nice, but maybe in the
Would have got
future
more.
we can have another lecture. Yeah, but yeah,
Thank you
it's such a
so
pleasure to
much.
finally meet you.
You
oh,
And
it's
too.
thank you
so
for
great to meet you
accommodating my
too.
timing.
Oh,
I'm
of
sorry you
course.
up so early.
No, it was totally
It's
fine.
Yeah,
fine. It's
I
fine.
thank you
would have
so
I
much.
would have got up at 3 for you, Harriet.
Oh,
Truly. We
we'll
would
have
have
to
got
do
up
another
even
one later down
earlier.
the line when I get up really early for you. I
Yes,
promise I
we'll
will.
switch off, promise.
We'll switch it. Yeah,
Perfect.
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you
Well,
so
have a
much,
gorgeous rest of your
Harriet.
day, both.
You too.
See you
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.